Okay. Um, yeah, I mean, very good game. Very, very, very good game. Uh, I, another thing that I'm torn about, I think, sort of, especially here at the end of it, is that for a game that is about collecting different endings, uh, it doesn't make it easy to go through the game multiple times. And again, I think that is intentional. I think that's part of the design. You just have to sort of recognize that it's kind of a frustrating design, right? As a player, part of what I want is to experience the breadth of what the game has to offer. And I think that this is a game that's explicitly about denying that, about sort of the narrative of the game is about making this difficult choice, and the sense of permanence that comes from making that choice, right? So it's not inappropriate for the game to feel like, okay, we're done and we've deleted your save and that's the ending that you get, and that's sort of it. But you also have to recognize that is counter to the instincts that your players are going to have, for whatever that's worth. And I mean, it's worth something. It is important to sort of keep in mind. Okay, so Kyla is filling us in. So the two non-book endings. One, burn the book. It turns out that you can't actually destroy the book. In desperation to not let Quince win, you retain eternal control of the book, clutching it to you as time repeats around you eternally and the world crumbles. Quince loses, but you never get to move on. Which is sort of what Simona did, right? Like, that was Simona's... Well, no, except time repeats around you eternally. Okay, so that's a sort of a non-ending. And then here's another one. If you find all of the endings, and it might actually not be all of the endings. I've heard kind of conflicting things, but at least when you found a bunch of the endings, and maybe you do need to find all of them. Quince interprets this as you enjoying toying with people's lives, and gives you the power Exunt, which lets you instantly kill anyone at will. He challenges you to try to kill everyone in Elsinore within a certain time limit without getting caught. As you do so, you gradually lose your humanity and come to enjoy torturing others as Quince does. If you manage to complete his challenge, he agrees to take you with him on to the next world to play with it by his side. The game has an Easter egg that implies the next world is related to the world of Outer Wilds. Wild, very fun. Basically, he takes you through a magic portal to be an evil god alongside him. That's cool. That's awesome. Hey, Zyva, we just started doing a Q&A after choosing an ending where Ophelia and her family voluntarily go into exile, and live out their lives on a small estate with no income. Honestly, it seems like they have pretty decent lives. They're just not noble. They just don't have, like, servants. But they get married, and they have kids, and they have a home. They have to learn how to chop wood. But that's about it. So it is actually painted in a very kind of sad and disappointed way. But it doesn't seem like it's that bad of a life. So I feel pretty good about what we did for Ophelia. I still feel like to keep the book forever isn't internally plausible within the narrative. Ophelia has continuity from loop to loop. Eventually, she would relinquish the book. Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, it's sure. I think there's a couple of ways to look at it, and one is sort of the in an infinite universe, any event that has a non-zero probability is going to happen, right? So if there's a non-zero probability of Ophelia giving Quince the book, then on an infinite timeline, eventually she'll do it. I think the other way that you look at it is day to day, right? Like, one day at a time. Is she stubborn enough to hold on to that? And I don't know. I mean, there's something sort of philosophical and metaphysical about that debate. I don't know that I would begrudge a story on those grounds. The Exhumed sequence itself, where you have to stealthily kill everyone, is very dark. Yeah, I bet. The death animations are that one Quince used where people get picked up and contorted and thrown around. Yeah, that sounds not super great. This is a game. So, okay, Zyvo, I'm on the same boat as you. I feel like this is a game where the intent of the game makes sense and is internally consistent and drives towards you have to choose an ending and you play towards that ending, and then you go on YouTube and you watch the other endings. I don't actually, now I'm realizing I don't know if this is what you were saying Zyvo, but this is what I'm saying, is that, like, I want to see what happens in the other worlds, and I respect that the game doesn't want to make that easy for me within the game context, which is fine, because there exists sort of an out of game context where I can do it, and I think that's what I'm going to do. Yeah, cool. Good. Okay, so if there aren't specific questions that folks have about this, there are a couple of topics that I wanted to cover, and one is sort of a broad comparison of this game and Lucifer Within Us. Just because those are the two that we played, and they have some, at least, superficial similarities with a sort of time looping. I don't know anything about the production for either one of these games, really. I don't have any insight into the behind the scenes. But I do know that this game, I can track Elsinore as a Kickstarter project. I remember what it looked like when it went up for crowdfunding, and I backed it, and I was sort of aware of its development. I follow one of the developers, more than one of the developers, on Twitter, and so I kind of track its development. It had a long development. It had a long production, and it was longer than they anticipated, like a lot of Kickstarter projects. It went on longer than they expected, but not sort of like an indefinite production hell of any kind. But it was clear that they spent a lot of time and work on it. And it is limited in scope. It's not more limited than Lucifer Within Us, certainly. In fact, it is, the world is bigger than Lucifer Within Us. The populated world, right? Like the world that you play in. But I think it had a longer production schedule. I think that it certainly doesn't feel rushed in places the way that Lucifer did. And the writing for this game is extremely good. The technology is also very good. It's like really solid. I like the way that it is set up and the interface for it and sort of how it all plays out. But I think the thing that really ties it all together is that the narrative design and the actual dialogue are both very, very, very good. And I think in Lucifer Within Us, that struggled more. It struggled in the larger sort of how the narrative was designed, how it actually unfolded, where pieces of it were sort of stashed away and hidden in the world. And also the moment-to-moment dialogue was not quite as clear in how it painted the characters with sort of depth, but also in ways that were really memorable and sympathetic. And Elsinore does that tremendously well. I have such a good sense of who all of these characters are, and all of them work on one level as caricature, but have a depth to them that is accessible and believable. And thinking about Othello, or thinking about Lady Brit, I think is a great example. And those are characters who were added to the play, but also I feel like I don't know that Gertrude is such a reach, but Guildenstern. Guildenstern is such a cardboard character in Hamlet. Is such a sort of like, I don't know, is not meant to have emotion or depth attached to him, and Guildenstern in this game, and the background that she has and the way that she sort of deals with it, and the way that shapes her worldview. I mean, it even though she is still a very silly character in this game, I feel like I know her better than I could ever claim to know Guildenstern in the original play. So I think that where Lucifer Within Us has a tremendous amount of potential and is very exciting as an experiment, frankly, in the genre, and was sort of interesting to play, and I would love to see more of it. I feel like Elsinore is more of a complete execution of that kind of promise. And obviously it's a different game, but even as a game that is about this kind of story box and time looping, and even Lucifer Within Us is very much a game about social dynamics, and in a detective kind of a way, in sort of solving a mystery through understanding who the characters are and how they relate to each other, and why one of them would commit a crime. Elsinore, I think, takes that, plays in that same space of social dynamics and uncovering the social dynamics, right? Uncovering the motivations and the psychologies and the weirdness, the hang-ups, the issues that people have and have amongst one another, have socially. And it explores that in sort of just a deeper and fuller way, which I really appreciate. I think it was, I really, really like this game. Sacrifice independence for peace, which I did get, and Kyla was saying that when she played and got Sacrifice Independence for Peace, she was able to do it maybe with fewer tragic deaths than when I did it. She's saying in the ending, Sacrifice Independence for Peace, that I did, Ophelia doesn't really get to see her family. She does end up falling in love with and marrying Fortinbras's younger brother, so that's cool. That is cool. The sense that I got from reading about the ending with Claudius, where you seduce Claudius, and the reason that this person, whoever they are, this player, put it high on their list of endings, is that Claudius seems to sort of take a back seat, and at least in their interpretation of it, Ophelia kind of gets to rule Denmark and seems to be a better leader of Denmark than pretty much anybody else in the cast would have been. Which I also understand that. I understand that as this is an ending that you would give up a lot for, and the path to it is very dark, and you were sacrificing a lot of your individuality, but I can understand the appeal or the value of a path that ends with, well, at least Denmark is in good hands, right? So yeah, I think, which is to say, all of these endings where there are sacrifices, all of these endings where you feel like there's a trade-off and there's sort of a sadness to them, there's a bad ending quality to them all, I think they're all well done, in that even the Ophelia goes crazy and submits to living a life that is illusion, that she knows is not real. Even that sort of like makes it very clear that there is a positive to that ending, that at least you can have a sort of happiness in that, in denying reality. And I think the game does that really well. Not so much a question, but something for you to expound on. The makers of this game have talked about the idea that fate and tragedy are not a Rube Goldberg machine where one event causes everything. It's built into people's natures and relationships. The natural result of those forces, you can't avert the tragedy because that is who the characters are. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I think that makes sense to me as an interpretation of Hamlet, of the literature. And it makes sense to me as a sort of guiding principle to the social simulation that is at the heart of this game, right? This game is not about, these are the events that have to take place. All of the events in the game are predicated on characters instigating them, and the characters have understandings and beliefs and motivations that cause them to instigate these tragic events, right? Some of them purposefully, and then some of them sort of tragically. Laertes is always going to stand up against a foreign king coming in and claiming control of Denmark, and so Fortinbras is always going to kill him if that happens. Like, that is those characters. That is those characters. You know, their character, their psychology, their sort of like way of thinking and being coming into conflict under those particular circumstances. I do think that like that gets abstracted a bit because we're not, you know, fully simulating the complexity of human psychology. And there is not an infinite number of potential outcomes over the course of 4 days, as you would imagine there would be in like a real life if you could somehow track this in the real world. So we're simplifying those psychologies, and we're simplifying the sort of the world of events that can happen. But I think it's significant that the game approaches that simplification from the standpoint of, okay, well, we're gonna take the complexity of a character psychology and trim it down to a sort of state machine of beliefs and desires, and characters are driven by their beliefs and desires, and events, they come into conflict with one another through events, but those events are sort of driven by them, which I think makes sense. Like, I think all of that makes sense. It's not a Rube Goldberg machine. I guess the idea there is that a Rube Goldberg machine is designed very intentionally, right? A Rube Goldberg machine has an outcome, and theoretically it has a starting action. Like, you know, how do you start a Rube Goldberg machine? You drop a ping pong ball down this funnel, and that sets off a chain of events that will lead to this conclusion. In fact, the way that Rube Goldberg machines are constructed, there are a lot of potential start points. You could start it anywhere along the sequence and it would continue. But it would always drive towards the same conclusion, right? Because it is designed intentionally towards that conclusion. And so I think that the meaning of this is the social simulation isn't designed to lead inexorably towards the tragic conclusion. And on some level, that's just not true, right? Like, the game is designed to lead to those tragic ends. It's just designed to lead to those tragic ends through the means of characters coming into conflict, and not through like Deus Ex Machina of some sort, which, yeah, I think that's fair. But don't be mistaken, what the characters' beliefs and motivations are defined by the design of that machine, and the game is able to and does change those beliefs and those motivations, and it changes them in specific ways that sort of lead to tragedy. It's not that you couldn't design a world in which things worked out better, especially if you have the kind of latitude that they take, where you can send characters off on different, on on different life paths so that they don't come into conflict in the same way. Like if you're allowed to do that, then I think you can make this story less tragic. But I think that the way that they approach the tragedy of it as being character driven does make it like feel really concrete and resonant and sort of inexorable, right? Like you understand why this can't be solved perfectly. Oh, a Rube Goldberg machine, if people aren't familiar with it, is a very complex contraption that involves multiple steps, usually dominoes at some point, and sort of a sequence of simple actions that are all caused one after another in order to accomplish some sort of mundane task. So if you think about Wallace and Gromit, for example, they do a bunch with Rube Goldberg machines, OK Go music video with an Rube Goldberg machine. There are lots of examples of cool videos that you can see. I like the mechanic of saying person X now believes Y when something significant was performed. Reminded me a lot of Telltale Adventures. And I think that's why it is presented the way that it is to the player. But I also appreciate that it helps unearth the logic that is driving the game. That I can understand that each of these characters has sort of a series of tags that represent the things in the world that they're aware of. And through conversation with other characters, either player-driven or driven by the characters themselves, those tags can change. They can come to sort of new understandings, and they can change their motivations, and that sort of drives subsequent things. So I enjoy, as the kind of person who enjoys pulling systems apart, I enjoy getting that sort of glimpse into how the whole thing is structured and how it's all working, and also the sort of clarity of understanding that this was significant, right? This has made a difference in this particular way to this particular character. A Rube Goldberg machine has to have every specific action work correctly in order to end. If some part of it fails, then you never get to the end. Yeah, right. I mean, which is what is impressive about seeing a Rube Goldberg machine in action, is that you sort of get a sense for the hundreds and thousands of times that somebody had to try this in order to sort of get it to go perfectly. Ghost Trick, Rube Goldberg machines are also the main mechanic of Ghost Trick, another great time loop game. I think that I started playing Ghost Trick on the Nintendo DS, maybe, but I don't think I got very far into it. I don't remember it very well. I have a sort of a vague sense of the art style, I think, but not much more than that. I'll have to look that up. Yeah, I don't remember that very well. Okay, so let's end on the dragon question. We've got a couple of different varieties of this, I think. So, would this game be better with a dragon? And as Kyla poses it, would this game be better if a dragon attacked Elsinore? So, I want to... First of all, because I took a year and a half of a break from play-by-play, so I think there are some people who have come on board, maybe from Mostly Walking in the interim. If you're not familiar with the Dragon Question, this is a long-standing tradition of Q&As for play-by-play, is asking the question, would this game be better if there was a dragon in it? I don't remember exactly how that originated, what game it was that first prompted this, but now it's become sort of a universal. And we think about it in a couple of different ways. One is narrative and literal. So would this game benefit from having a dragon in it? It would fit in some ways. It's a sort of a medieval setting, and it allows for the fantastical, right? I do blame Casual Dragon. Certainly perpetuated this. I just don't remember the specifics of how it started. Hey Lee, we're wrapping up. I'm talking about dragons in Hamlet. So like from a genre standpoint, I feel like this story could support a dragon, and very specifically, yeah, as Huck says, very specifically, if a dragon attacked Elsinore, it couldn't really make things worse. Like from a narrative standpoint, from a like character outcome standpoint, maybe it would be good. Maybe it would be an interesting ending if you could sort of, in some ways, similar to run off with Othello and leave everybody else behind, and sort of exist with him in a time between plays, until he goes off to do his own Shakespearean work. An ending where a dragon comes in and sort of says all of the petty politics, all of this interpersonal nonsense, who killed whose father, who killed who betrayed or lied to or used or abused who runs what country, who lives in this castle. All of that is really secondary. Is doesn't have the sort of deep meaning that you ascribe to it if we burn the castle down. Right? Like we could come in here and we could say there is no nobility. That is a construct. That is a social construct. The way that other things might be social constructs. The way that maybe monogamy is a social construct. Maybe crime is a social construct. Like there is a level of existence where that supersedes those things. I think a dragon ending kind of calls that out, and maybe that's a different kind of tragedy. On a literal narrative level, of course, this is Hamlet, and it deviates from Hamlet in some significant ways, but in ways that I think are purposefully in keeping with the spirit of the play. Ophelia going off on a pirate adventure is not so out of step with Hamlet going off on a pirate adventure, kind of in between scenes of the actual play, and different types of tragedy unfolding. The sort of like reemergence and agency, like added agency of the ghost. Even Peter Quince, even the sort of whole meta conceit of a god that is toying with the people here is not so far gone from the sort of supernatural tragedy of the original play. And I think that a dragon coming in, swooping in, and sort of ending things for the players that is sort of a different level of narrative. Now, from a mechanical standpoint, if we interpret the dragon as the element of the game that breaks the established rules, I think that, Quince is not a dragon in the same way that we would call Lucifer a dragon narratively. But I think that Quince fulfills that role, fulfills the sort of the role of the world breaker a couple times over. Early in the game as establishing a character, the one character that sort of is aware of the conceit of the game, of the mechanics of the game. And then again, the sort of false ending of, teaming up with the Hamlets to try to take down Dionysus, and the sort of grand adventure of that, and the saccharine false ending of that, the epilogue. All of that, I think, is again sort of breaking the established rules of interaction with the game in a way that's really satisfying. I don't know that I need another dragon in this. I think that this game delights in twisting, taking beyond establishing what is possible within the premise of the game, and then taking you up to those limits and breaking beyond them. This game, I think, really takes a lot of delight in that, which is what I want a dragon for. And as a final boss, as an ultimate challenge, that can't be beaten by traditional means, I think that Peter Quince absolutely fulfills that. So I think I might want another game where a dragon comes in and burns down Elsinore. I think that that might be cathartic in a different way. But I think that this game does a really good job of bringing its own dragons to bear. The dragon emojis that you guys are doing are amazing. That's incredible. Santa hat, Rudolph nose, dragon, wild. I love it. Okay. Thanks everybody. Lee has a Minecraft server that they're gonna run. Might be fun. That sounds good. Everybody have a great weekend. It's Friday. Next week is Christmas. I don't think I'm going to do any streaming the next 2 weeks, but we'll see. Maybe we'll do something ad hoc if I get bored, because I don't actually have any work. I'm on vacation. My wife is home. We're going to do a lot of baking. We're going to watch bad holiday Hallmark movies. If there's time in between there for me to start up something else, then maybe I'll play something casually. But when the semester starts in a couple of weeks, I'm going to try to do some streaming in the afternoons like this. Not every day, but a little bit more regularly. So stay tuned, and we'll do that. Everybody have a great weekend. Have a great couple of weeks. A happy new year. I hope that it is restful, if that's possible. I hope that it can help to rejuvenate you. Stay kind, stay safe, and I'll see you around. Bye.